Hi, I'm Mike from Back to Bikes. I'm here to show you a little bit of a way around the project and how to do some debugging. So let's have a look at the repository here, Back to Bikes attendance. The version 1 of the app is in a folder called Meteor app. Hello, honey. And yeah, good girl. Let's have a look at how we open it up in Visual Studio Code. All right, so if I go to VS Code and I say new, I'll make it full screen, make it easy, and then I say, right, add folder to workspace. So if I go to Back to Bikes, and if I choose the attendance app, it works, but the problem is that the debugging doesn't work unless you're in the actual root of the Meteor folder. So we'll open up the Meteor app folder and add that. And then if you look at the files here, you can see where they all are. There's imports, API, UI stuff is down here. All right, so let's have a look at how we run the project. What I might do in the meantime is start a little shell. I prefer to run the server in a separate shell, and I use a thing called iTerm, which is very good. And it gives me some features like I can actually split the screen vertically and horizontally if I want, so I can even split it vertically like that as well, so I can have lots of little things going on at the same time. All right, so let's cd to Back to Bikes, attendance, Meteor app. All right. And then what I'm going to do is npm run debug.b2b, which is the Back to Bikes version of the project. And that basically has some settings, like it says the Mongo URL is the B2B database, and it uses this dev.b2b settings.json. So if we look at this, let's just cd. So you see in here there are stuff like API keys, email message IDs, and then down the bottom there's stuff about the configuration. So the shop is turned on, the add card isn't, the pay now is, the organisation's Back to B2B, and the name is Back to Bikes. So more about that later. But basically we're running that up there. And once that's up and running, we'll have a look at it. Let's meanwhile look at the code and look at how we debug things. So in here, let's have a look at your extensions. Now I've already got debugger for Chrome, which you'll need. GitLens, which tells me who's changed the code. The live share is useful if you want to collaborate with other developers and do a live session. Markdown notes is useful, or Markdown preview is useful to have a look at Markdown code. And prettier is kind of essential because that formats the code for us. And then I like this rainbow brackets. The value of rainbow brackets is if we go into a file and we look at it, that's probably not a good one to look at, then it colours the brackets so that you can see the yellow one matches with the yellow one. So it just makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on with those. So let's go back to rainbow brackets. Yeah, and that's basically it. There are lots and lots of other things, like there's a debugger for Firefox if you use that. Okay, so let's say that we're making progress on setting our VSCode up. Another thing is, if you look at the panel down the side there, there's an awful lot of little sections that are open or available for you anyway, they're not open. Most of those I don't actually use myself, so you can turn those things off one by one. So you basically tailor your environment to make it a little bit tidier for you. You can have a look in those sections and decide whether you want them yourself or not. Even the list of open editors, I find it just takes up space that I don't need anyway. So how do I do that? So now I'm pretty neat because I've just got the File Explorer on the left-hand side, so that's perfect for me. It's just what I like. Okay, so let's have a look at setting a breakpoint. So let's say that in our source code we've got this import startup server, and there's a file called sms.js, which is down here. It's highlighted there. All right. Meteor methods are server methods. They're run by Node.js. So Meteor has a Node.js service that runs in the background and a front end which runs on your computer. And instead of REST API, it basically defines these methods. So there's a method called hello here. It takes a name as a parameter, and it basically just calls this debug hello from server name. Now, I'll just sidetrack for a moment and talk about the debug library. Basically, this is a module that's imported, and you do a thing called currying with it, where you call a second function on it to provide it some data. So you say the scope of this is the B2B project and with the SMS module. The benefit over this, because you're going to say to me, well, look, why didn't you just write this console.log here? And it's like, yes, that works, and it does basically the same thing, excepting that console.log comes out always. So really it's a noisy output that the user can see, and they can start having a look at how you're debugging the thing. So I much prefer debug, because debug is controlled, the actual output is controlled by an environment variable. So it is neater. The only downside is you do need to import a library to do it on every source code, so that's not the best. Anyway, that's a sidetrack. Let's have a look at this, and let's say I want to set a breakpoint on this. Then I've got this little place here where I can put a dot there, and it'll light up to say, yes, this code is in scope, and I can set a breakpoint on it. And I also need to bring up the debugger and basically attach to the process that's sitting in the background. So over here I've got this Meteor process running. And if you scroll up, you'll notice that it says listening to the debugger on this port. So in our package.json, we've got a setting. I'll just find that. I go here and we go package.json. We ran this with debug.b2b, and we had this --inspect. And basically that invokes the debugger, like it listens for the debugger on a port 9229. Okay, so that's there, the server is running. We then need to attach to it. So we'll bring up this little panel here, and you notice that there's a list of points that we can attach to attach or launch. The settings icon here allows us to look at the different configurations. So I'm going to look at right now the server one, which is basically this one. You see it says it's port 9229, and it just calls itself server. So it looks for a process with that name on it, with that port, and it'll attach to it. So I've selected server here, and then I hit the little green arrow, and it brings up this little toolbar which basically tells me that it's attached to the node process. And it also has this call stack thing here, and I've got a breakpoint set here. So as I turn it on and off, you see that it actually appears over here as well. Let's just get rid of that one. You can also do stuff like look for uncaught exceptions or caught exceptions, but let's not worry about that now. Let's look at this breakpoint. So in order to invoke this function called hello, we'll go to the user interface and we'll find it. I think it's on 3030. It is, and we'll go to, doesn't really matter where we go to. This is the sign-in page. And if I bring up the inspector and go to the console, I can do this thing called, I can call a function, a Meteor method with this Meteor call syntax, and I give it the name of the one that I'm going to call. So I call it, and bang, it's now hit the breakpoint, and it's passed in name. Oh, I forgot to pass the name. So this is probably going to blow up. So if I hit continue, and then I look in the console output here, it didn't blow up, it just says hello from the server undefined, which is not bad. So let's have a look, have another go and say in the console here, I'll give it my name as well. So I say hello Mike, it gets called here, and then you'll see that this name variable has the value Mike, and I can hit continue, and then I can see over here that it now says hello from the server Mike. Very good. Alright, that's a little bit trivial, but good for a starting point. So let's have a look at this function here, the send pin SMS, and let's invoke that. So we'll call that I forgot to set a breakpoint on it. Okay, so it will have run it and probably failed. So I'll set my breakpoint and I'll invoke it again. Alright, so we've broken at this breakpoint, and the problem is if I hover over this, that the SMS settings.enabled is false. So this is going to skip over this function and not do it. But I can get around that because I can go and find it here. So in my closure in the module itself, I can see all the variables I've got, and then SMS settings here, and I can change this value to be true. And then it means that when I do this step over, it will then go ahead and continue past that because I've satisfied that thing. It's a bit of a hack, it's okay. And then it's going to send this message with the contents are now Mike to destination, and the destination is blank. So that's probably going to blow up. But let's keep going for a moment, and then you'll see that it's constructed this body object, and if we look at the body you can see that the from is undefined, the message has got a value, password's undefined, to is undefined, and so on. So again, if I look at this, the can I change the body? Change the body here, so I can say the to, and I can put in my phone number, for example, and then I can say it's from me. Whoops, I wanted to quote a string. So you can see how you can fudge the data at any time, and then you can say, right, continue, and go off and do things. I won't send it out, but you get the idea of how you've got total control over the data and the flow of code, and you can step through line by line. You can set another breakpoint here. You can just hit go. You can step into a function. So if your code calls another function, you can step into it and step through that. Or you can basically just continue, or you can disconnect, or you can restart the process, and that basically just gets you out without any damage. Alright, so that's that on the server-side debugging. Have a play with it and see how you go.